Take me to the water. Take me to the water.
I grew up in a Black Baptist church. I want to say it was a very exciting place for me, but it was also very scary. And so in a sense, it represented a space of safety and comfort, but at the same time, there was an experience of a lot of judgment, which I felt early on, a lot of scrutiny. I had a family, like my grandfather was a preacher before I was born, and he was very well known in that church, and so we had an image that we had to keep up, and so I represented more than who I felt I really was. In church, I was often questioned about not my sexuality, but who I was sleeping with. There was always, are you a virgin? Are you a virgin? That was the question that was given to me. And my presentation at the time was very limited because my grandmother bought all my clothes and she was very strict about what I could wear. I always had to wear a skirt or a dress. I always had, from my neck down, I was completely covered. She'd say you have to be covered before God and before men. One of the things that confused me about church was this emphasis on female sexuality, in that the lessons that I got around creating healthy physical and spiritual boundaries were, you wait until you're married to have sex. And it was already assumed that you were going to have sex with a man at some point. You were going to marry a man if you were a woman. Because a lot of us in my church grew up with a history of some sort of sexual abuse happening within our families, within the people who were in the church congregation. We weren't really touching on that. Anytime we touched on something that was, of a sexual nature, it was always focused on, you're not allowed to be homosexual, you're not allowed to have sex until you're married, and those were the two languages we were given. My church was very clear on where they stood in terms of homosexuality. Every Sunday, we had some scriptures that we would say, and then we had sort of the mantras of the church, and we would all say it as a congregation, no matter where you were. So even if you were working in the nursery or at the gym that was, down the road, there were large teleprompters that would say, we receive inspiration from our church, education from our school, recreation from our family life center, preservation from our resources. And then we'd say, we know that lesbianism and homosexuality are abominations to God. And then the church would all say amen. And this was every single Sunday. Even at that time, I remember being 14 years old and hearing that and saying that. And every time I said it, I was infuriated. I was livid inside, but I didn't say anything because I was very clear with myself that I was attracted to women. My church experience, it put a lot of pressure on me to come out. I had a moment where I was just like, this needs to be said. I need to just let it out because I'm frustrated. My grandmother would always say, God has prepared you for a husband. God has made your body for a man. God has made your body for a man. And I remember her praying one day, and she just looked up at the sky and she's just like, God, please don't let her be gay. Don't let her be gay. I'd rather her bring home a white man than a woman. And I'm like, well, since my first kiss was a blonde-haired, blue-eyed girl, you're getting a little bit of a double whammy. I had moved away. I went to New York, went off to school. I was away from my family, so I was away from my church influence. I started to feel a lot of the pressure from my grandmother. I would speak to her every day. One day she let me know how disgusted she was. She was just like, ew, how can two women touch each other and enjoy that? It doesn't make sense. And I was just like, well, I think two women have the right to do that, and it is enjoyable. And I call myself coming out saying that to her. And it ended up being the last conversation we had for 2 or 3 years. Because I knew at that point that I couldn't go back to my church. I knew at that point that my dynamics with my family would have to shift. I turned away from church. I turned away from God. I turned away from my own spiritual practices because I didn't feel accepted. Because at the core, I did not feel loved. And I also didn't feel like God had affirmed any reality for me that I was living in. It made me feel very lost, very disconnected. I felt very alone. I missed my family. I missed being a part of a congregation. I missed the music of the church. I missed, the fellowship and the eating together. I missed holding hands. I missed a lot about that positive energy. It would have helped to hear that I'm not bad, that I was not bad for feeling what I felt, for kissing who I kissed, for loving who I loved in the way that I conceived that at that time. I recognize that if I'm going to bring someone home, it has to be on the grounds that I'm accepted for who I am. And though I would like to bring somebody home to my family, I'm not clear with them. I don't know where they stand now. I haven't spoken to them about my sexuality. We've never had a solid conversation around that. All I've carried with me for years are the messages from my church and from, our weekly Bible studies, our family meetings. My spiritual practices now are very similar to what they were when I was a kid. I don't have the religious framework, that sort of structure around it. I don't attend a church, but I do pray. My grandmother taught me to pray when I was little, and that's something that I've begun to do again, is to pray every morning, every night, and to affirm myself in ways that I feel that I need to be affirmed.
Take me to the water. Take me to the water. Take me to the water.